So I'm Sean Sheehy. I'm the director of the Movable Book Society and your co-host this evening, along with Emily Martin. Emily, introduce yourself.
Hello. I'm Emily Martin. I teach pop-up books, artist books, paper engineering, etc. at the University of Iowa, and I make them myself. And I am your tech co-host today. So I'm going to try and keep admitting people.
Also in the house this evening is Kyra Hicks, our chat mistress, waving at you right now.
Yay!
So follow the chat, and she's got stuff going on there. Anything you want to say about yourself tonight, Kyra?
Only that I'm excited to see everybody, and if you can get a moment in the chat, let us know where you're from, what state, what country. It'll be exciting to see. Take care.
Absolutely. And also managing our social media things tonight is Isabel Uria. Do you want to say anything about yourself, Isabel?
Hello. No, just welcome everybody. I'm a designer, paper engineer. I know quite a bit of you, and I hope to see lots of familiar faces today. Hope you enjoy all the presentations.
Super. So we're going to be jumping in just a moment, but tiny little bit of housekeeping. First off, now that folks are getting in and naming yourselves in chat and taking a look around to see who else is here, we ask that you will turn off your video once the presentation starts, just so we can save a little bandwidth for some of those videos to have an easier rolling out of things tonight. And we're going to ask you also to throw questions if you have questions for your presenters, to put those in the chat, and we'll be keeping an eye on that, and we'll ask questions from that after the presentations are over. And I would like to begin this evening, before we introduce our first presenters, to just throw out a very casual poll to all of you who are with us tonight. And I'm going to take a quick look to see how many are here. All right, we're creeping up on 70. Because, you know, this is the year. We're going to reschedule. We're going to rerun the conference that we were supposed to have last year. And it's going to be end of September, beginning of October, that weekend. And it will be again in Denver. And we are absolutely planning to have it be a hybrid experience. And what I'm curious to know, and it's a very casual poll that I'm launching right now, is if A, you are someone who thinks that you are going to be interesting in attending live, assuming that we've got our vaccine situation figured out, I would love for you just to type a little live into the chat feed. And if instead you are someone who is interesting in attending a hybrid version, and especially knowing that we're probably still going to charge a fee for people who are attending online only. If you're going to be interested in probably attending online in that hybrid version, to also throw that in the chat. And that'll just help me get a sense of what people are thinking right now. That'll be useful. Good. So let's jump into our first presentation. So delighted, I'm so delighted to be introducing to you Renee Jablow and Andy Logan, who've been working on this great project together called The Shivers. And, you know, I met Renee super long time ago, I think somewhere around in the mid-aughts. And Renee, I met her at one of the big book fairs in Chicago, and have just known her as a lovely human and a very competent paper engineer ever since. You know, she's a real veteran. She has polished her paper engineering skills at Intervisual Books, where she worked for 13 years, along with some of the, you know, the big dogs of paper engineering in the past couple of decades. She is credited with paper engineering more than 70 children's books, along with lots of different other pop-up ephemera items. She has her amazing Birdscapes book that Chronicle published that has different bird audio every time you turn a page. It's super great. She's done a lot of work for Up with Paper. And, you know, she's really interested in playing with putting pop-ups in different kinds of formats. Some of you might recall the pop-up playland that she built that was for hamsters, gerbils, hamsters, small rodents,
Small mammals.
small mammals. And now working on this Shivers project, which we're going to learn a lot about. And she's still in LA, and she's still doing lots of freelance work, and she's making magic happen. Along with Andy Logan, who is a veteran of California's design and innovation industry. Besides his 20+ year career designing products for leading brands worldwide, he's also begun a new venture introducing the magic of pop-ups to the realm of tabletop gaming. This new game that I mentioned, The Shivers, has recently had a highly, that's an understatement, I will tell you, a highly successful debut on Kickstarter, and it's on track to release later this year. Andy and Renee, tell us about it.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, this is Andy Logan here, and we'll let Renee have a chance to speak in a second. But yeah, if you can all see my webcam, this is the Shivers game that Renee and I have been working on over the last year plus. And it's going to be one of the first tabletop games to employ, as you said, Sean, the magic of pop-ups. So we're now deep in development. We've gone through our Kickstarter. We're polishing the game and writing all the stories. And it features a whole bunch of playable pop-up rooms you can explore. So rooms like this, and you'd have a little standee, you'd have a little character that goes around with you, opening doors and exploring clues and things like that. So these are all magnetically locked together, different rooms. And we have a short video that will probably explain it a bit better than I can at the moment. So if we'd like to queue up the video, we can learn about it more in depth, and then Renee can jump in and The Shivers is a completely new type of tabletop game, a pop-up mystery adventure. It features several modular room tiles that pop up to create a three-dimensional haunted house game space, filled with spooky clues to explore and clever puzzles to solve. Once players complete one episode, which takes about an hour to play, they simply swap the story cards and the room layouts, and a new adventure is ready to begin. The Shivers is for 2 to 5 people aged 7 and up. It's both simple enough for novice gamers and rich enough for seasoned RPG veterans. I'm Andy Logan, creator of The Shivers, and we're looking for your support to bring this one-of-a-kind creation to the world. By trade, I'm an experienced product designer who has helped bring dozens of products successfully to market for some of the world's leading brands. I decided to create The Shivers after searching for a game to play with my young family, one that was filled with magic and mystery, but also simplicity. We couldn't find a game that checked those boxes, so I set about creating my own. I then built some simple pop-ups and started playtesting those with my family and their Girl Scout troop and at local game shops. The playtests were so exciting that I knew this was something that had to live further. So I contacted 2 key creative legends. Bill Tiller is our amazing illustrator, and you'll know his work if you've played games like The Dig or Monkey Island. He's helped develop the rich look and feel of the Shivers world and its characters. We are also collaborating with Renee Jablow, who is engineering the complex pop-up environments to ensure that they are robust and fully functional. Renee is a 20-year veteran of the pop-up publishing industry, whose amazing work on projects like Hogwarts School really captured our imagination. People who play The Shivers tell us that it feels a lot like an escape room mystery, just on a tabletop scale. So please consider backing our game. We need your help to bring this one-of-a-kind experience to the world. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. If you go to our Kickstarter page, that's the video you'll see up there, and it was a lot of fun to make with the camera crawling through the scenes and the smoke and everything. And that was a really fun shoot. And it enticed people to really come and back the project. So great marriage of video and pop-up and storytelling, I think. So yeah, we're just here to talk about the game a little bit and do some Q&A. It's a lot of fun. We've play tested it across the country at different trade shows in prototype form and many dozens of times. So it's starting to build momentum and interest out there. Renee's been instrumental in making these amazing rooms really beautiful and works of art themselves that you can play. So we're excited to get this in people's hands around September, October timeframe later this year. And yeah, that's it. If you'd like to, it's available for pre-order now. If you'd love to place an order, we're also talking to retailers about getting them in brick and mortar shops for it's about 75 MSRP for the basic game, and there's a deluxe version that's about 99. Renee, would you like to jump in and
sure.
chat?
Yeah, I was really excited when Andy contacted me because I love games, and we all know I love pop-ups. So incorporating the two together just seems like such a natural fit. So Andy has all the good stuff, color mock-ups, but I do have some of the older original mock-ups. Let's see. Oh, I'll hold up that one, Andy. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, that one.
We'll do a side by side.
Yeah, side by side. Oops, camera. So the numbers that you see were for Bill, the artist, to know, what piece was what when he was doing the artwork. And as you saw, his artwork is just amazing, and the way that he uses lighting and shading, and it really just adds even more dimension to the pop-ups. And tried to add little touches to make it more interactive, like the sheet comes down, something could be hiding in there. And let's see, I've got the kitchen, if you want to hold that one up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, you can see, yeah, this is an earlier version, so we definitely have some changes going on there. And one feature that I just thought was such a great idea that Andy had was the story card and being able to change the story. So you've got windows in the back of the room, and then the story card pulls out, and you can see that with the different gray colors. Sorry, I'm not very good with the zoom reverse thing going on. With the different colors that you rotate it, and you get different stories going on. Ooh, nice. Yes, much more interesting in color. And I also have the Crypt, if you want to hold that one up.
Sure.
So here's the Crypt. You can look into the coffin there, see what's going on. So to tell you about just some of the challenges that we had to work on with these, I would say the biggest one was, how are we going to have these stay open at exactly 90 degrees and have the pop-up stand upright and hide the mechanism that's pulling it up, because we want to maximize the play area. So we went back and forth quite a bit, and we came up with a very straightforward solution, which was to use a kickstand like this to hold it open. And we experimented with having pieces attached, but nothing seemed to work as well as just using a separate piece and guaranteeing that it's 90 degrees, and it just keeps the pop-up cleaner, so you don't have to worry about having these extra little mechanisms and pieces attached. Let's see. And when I think of having a pop-up game, there's just something about that's just the instant gratification of, you pull it out of the box, you open it up, and here is the scene. And when you're done, you just close it and put it away. Just like, the Hogwarts and the carousel, doll houses. There's just to be able to just quickly have it activated and then put away. So anything else you want to add, Andy?
Yeah, Renee's been instrumental in helping bring this vision to reality. I made these very crude mock-ups that look like this, and this was my first attempt at pop-up making, and I demoed this with actual game players, probably 50 times before I got to the full color version. So this was as far as I could take it on my own limited abilities, and then bringing Renee on and seeing what it can really become has just been incredible. And I know that she's the key piece of the puzzle that's needed to really get this out into the world of tens of thousands of copies, thousands of repeating cycles, and not have it just fall apart. So I know it's going to be a robust and long-lived game on people's shelves.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, you put a great team together. I think, as you other engineers know, working in isolation can be lonely and quiet, especially in this time. So having a team to work with has been a lot of fun. It's been great.
Yeah, we've got multiple writers, multiple game editors, several illustrators, graphic designers, the paper engineer Renee, patents, copyrights, legal, trademark. I mean, we've got so many team members doing different jobs, social media, business, that it's really, and during COVID, it's all remote. So it's been challenging to bring it all together, but so far it's going really well.
Yeah, so I think we're open for questions.
So let's start, Renee, with, or maybe this is an Andy question, maybe both. Is this the first Kickstarter project that you've run, Andy?
Yes.
So you just knocked it out of the park the first time.
Well, my background is product development, so I've had many dozens of products I helped get to market in other spaces. This is my first game and first Kickstarter. So some of the clients I've worked with have gone on to Kickstarter, but it's the first time I've managed my own campaign. And honestly, we had some really great mentors who are deeply familiar with the Kickstarter and tabletop game space. And they advised us every step of the way, the right moves, what to do, what not to do, what shows to go to, who to talk to, how to run the Kickstarter campaign. Without our mentors, it would have been a far different outcome.
Well, I'm gonna read some stats because this is what Kyra's doing. She's putting things in the chat. So she says the Kickstarter funding period was July 14th, 2020 to August 7th, 2020, just 24 days. And you had 6,794 backers pledging 576,892 buckaroonies to bring this project to life. That's outstanding. That's amazing.
Thank you. It's a good 2 or 3 times what we were hoping to get on our wildest fantasy.
Yeah.
So we're really pleased, and now it's in the pre-order stage where people can the Kickstarter's over, but people can order it, and it's just continuing to roll in with new orders and people still wanting it, even though it's not available till later this year.
Is there a fixed number for an initial production run, or is that still elastic?
That's pretty elastic. We got to see how many pre-orders we get, how many retailer orders we get. Where we might be co-publishing with a bigger company who might put in a very large order. So it's all pretty flexible at this point, but we will have to lock in that number within the next few months as we kind of finalize things with our manufacturing partner.
Gotcha. Did the success of the project change the timeline and the folks that you're partnering with?
Yeah, part of the things with Kickstarter is as you continue to succeed during your campaign, you have stretch goals that you kind of tease out there. If we hit this goal, well, we'll add this component to the game. And some of the things we added were like new rooms, more stories,
Stretch goal.
the nursery there that Renee held up. And so all those stretch goals are turning out to compound the schedule in a negative way. So more artwork, more writing, more paper engineering. So we're probably pushing out to a couple months past our initial date.
Renee, talk a little bit more about the magnets, if you will.
Oh, I love magnets. Yeah, it's I don't have a sample to show, but Andy will show you. And the great thing is that they, yeah, so the rooms just click together, and yeah, it's very satisfying. Also, Andy, do you have the transition pieces to show? This is great. So as you're playing the game and putting the rooms together, you have extra options. Here's a hallway, and that also connects. And there's yeah, the staircase piece. Yeah. So it's just fun because it doesn't have to just be a straightforward line of rooms. You can put them in different orders, different combinations.
Yeah.
Yeah, each room has 3 magnets that are embedded inside the base.
All right, so Dorothy asks, what's the difference between regular and deluxe versions?
The core game, as we call it, the regular one, comes with 6 rooms and 8 episodes to play. And the deluxe one comes with all that, plus 2 expansion packs. Each one has a room and more episodes. So that one has 2 more rooms, twice the episodes, more characters, there's create your own character aspects. There's just more goodies in the deluxe version.
Nice. I'm gonna ask one more question. We've got a pile of them in here, and maybe what we'll do is if there's any outstanding questions that weren't part of the talk earlier, that maybe we can pass them along to you and by email, and you can maybe answer a question or two, and then we can distribute that when we distribute the video in a couple of days. If someone doesn't have their copy ordered right now, how do they order a copy?
There's a link there in the chat. You can go to our Kickstarter page, and there's a big green button at the top that says pre-order now. And that'll take you to a separate e-store that allows people to order their copy that'll come out later in the year. And they can add add-ons, different options to it. So yeah, that's a good way to do it. They can also visit us at theshiversgame.com if you want to sign up for our mailing list. That's a great spot as well to kind of join the community and see our Instagram feed of how the game evolved over the last couple of years from its early origins.
That is terrific. That is terrific. I think you may have made a couple of extra sales this evening, maybe 1 or 2. All right, so Kyra just threw an Instagram, some Instagram info in there for y'all. So Andy, Renee, thank you very, very much. We are so looking forward to seeing this thing in real life, as I'm sure you are as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting us to share it tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whew. All right. So Ellen, okay. You've got some good stuff to follow there. So so following Ellen G.K. Rubin, who is also known as the Pop-Up Lady. And for those of you who are with us in November, you know that we began our series, our Rubin series, with her first installment, about 10 minutes of looking at stuff that's in her collection, part of which is behind her head right now. And we're going to continue with the second installment this evening. Ellen, of course, who is one of our preeminent national collectors of pop-up books. And she's located in Scarsdale and sometimes in Manhattan, depending on the day. And And one of, Ellen's big claim to fame, aside from the fact that she just has one of the best pop-up collections in the world, is that she was featured on Atlas Obscura in 2018. And that was pretty fun too. So Ellen, do you want to say anything before we jump to video?
Welcome. I'm glad those of you who came back and those who weren't here, as Sean said, you can go to our website and see the beginning of this talk because this has been videoed. And so, Emily, roll the tape. Pre-1800 books for your delight. I shop and share.
These books are by Ramon Llull. And he was a 13th century mystic whose dates actually overlapped with Matthew Paris. And we credit Matthew Paris with inventing the Vauvel. But Ramon Llull also used Vauvels. And how he used them, not like a calendar as Matthew Paris did, he believed that if you use these letters to represent segments of man's knowledge and then turn the wheels and collated them, you can get to represent all of man's knowledge and come to know God. So this book is from 1617, though, as I said, he wrote in the 13th century. But I did find a copy with the Vauvels in situ. And that will help you understand how they were cut out and assembled. And in this case, there is nothing on the back, but here's where you would be putting the Vauvel. This book, also with a vellum cover from 1755, was done by Jan Comenius, a Czech educator. And he wrote the first book with children's images in it. He's considered the father of the children's picture book because it was his idea in 1658 that children, in order to learn, should have pictures that go with the text. And so his books had texts in several languages and these images. And I was able to find this copy from 1755 where they actually put in a little Vauvel. And the Vauvel is very simple, showing sky and land. Well, we've now moved into the 17th century, and here is a book from 1663 for physicians, the Opera Medica. And they are using this Vauvel to decide when a person should have surgery on a particular disease or malady. Now, at the time of the 17th century, physicians were required to learn how to do their patient's horoscope. And that's part of what's going on here. And we have the pictures of the zodiac around here, and we have a calendar. And by coordinating these together, the physician was looking for the best time to do the surgery. I know you've probably heard me say the patient probably died anyway. Associate Renee Descartes with being a physician. But here is this vellum-covered book from 1664. And in it, he has shown anatomical parts and uses the flap technique. And that was very popular, using flaps, because It was in lieu of dissections. In most cases, physicians were forbidden to do dissections. They could only do them on executed prisoners or people who died in the poorhouse. And so there are several flap technique books in here as well. What's very special in my collection is anytime I can get my hands on a manuscript. And like the annotations I showed you in the Sphera, this book happens to be on sundials, is all hand drawn. I believe that the book was never published, but here it is on what is the best way to create a sundial. Should it be vertical? Should it be horizontal? And here is the little gnomon, sundials to cast the shadow from the sun. And again, I feel the immediacy of this writer. And he tied the knot using a playing card, which you could barely see here underneath. Also handmade manuscript. In 1706, the Sepulchres was printed in Hebrew and in Latin, and it shows on several pages how Jews like to be buried. What are the burial practices? And so when you lift the flap, you can see the coffins there inside. And here is another flap. This also is covered in vellum, and very typical to have this not printed but hand done title on the spine.
Okay, a trip down history.
End of part 2. And as Ellen said, part 1 is in the November video. And just go to our website, movablebooksociety.org, and we have a page for our Zoom events, and you can take a look at part 1 of Ellen's video. And we've got some questions for you, Ellen.
And that part 1 has just a view of the library.
Yes. Let's start with Helen's. She's asking if Volvels were meant to be assembled by the person who owned the book, or was that an unfinished unfinished book that you showed?
That was an unfinished book, the one that I showed you, where the Volvels weren't cut out, and either the printer would assemble the Volvel, or the person who owned the book would assemble it. I mentioned in the previous one that, curiously, some of those Volvels were printed with text on the back. So when you cut out the Volvels, you lost that text. I guess they did it to save paper, but you did lose the text that was on the other side.
There is speculation that you might have some good treasure hunting stories. Do you have a good top of your head treasure hunting story that you can share, Ellen?
I'd be hard pressed to think of one, but I find books anywhere, and that's something because people have asked me, well, where did you find it? And I've walked into anthropology and found Marshall's book, The Bouquet of Flowers, which we gave a Meggendorfer Prize to. I just never know where I'm going to find them, so I'm always looking.
I bet, yeah. All right. Emily, are you seeing another one that I have skipped over?
No, I think that was it, but I was going to add to that question about how you find them, because don't you have some pretty specific search engines working on your behalf online as well?
When I go to a website or an auction site, eBay is a very good example. It'll say, save this search. And so someone will tell me about a book that I don't have, or I recently completed a series of Random House books. There were 4 in the series. And for many, many years, I didn't have number 1. And so it's in eBay. And if it comes up, then it alerts me. So it's another way of finding things. But frankly, in this day and age, it's very hard because of the word pop-up. New York just created New York Pops Up. You know, there's pop-up campers, pop-up stores. So the search sometimes can be very futile, but when you're dedicated to it, you do your best.
Right, right. You dig down, you find it. Yeah. Super, excellent. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you very much. And like I said, this is 3 parts. So when we come back in May, we're going to see part number 3 of Ellen's library, bringing us closer to the present day, slightly.
Update.
Right. All right. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks very much. All right, so I'm going to take a short little break for all of you to get out your patterns and your tools and your glue, because we're going to be working on our project very soon. Katie Smith is saying amen to struggles with Googling pop-up. And while you're getting your tools together, a couple of housekeeping points. One, you might have noticed as I sent the Zoom reminder this morning, or you might have seen it on Facebook, or that there's a thesis student working on her master's degree in Lisbon, Mariana Nascimento, who has a survey. She'd love some help on it. And you're seeing Kyra throwing her URL in the chat feed right now. It's not super long, though. She does ask for you to write out some words, so it's not super short either, but she's interested in just what pop-ups are going to mean in the world in the near future. Some of you might have noticed that MJ Linford was supposed to be on the program tonight, and she is not, and that's because she has done some harm to herself, not intentionally, and she's taken some bed rest, and hopefully all right, Kyle just said it only took him 5 minutes to do that survey. Kyle is highly able, but that's probably a fairly good metric. 5 minutes. So send some happy thoughts to MJ. She's resting and recovering, and hopefully we'll see her in May with her presentation. Also, I know many of you have already done this because I see many familiar names in that participant list this evening, but the Movable Book Society has a book for sale right now, A to Z, Marvels in Paper Engineering, and still have some copies left. Don't wait too long. If you don't have your copy already, you can pick that up on our website, movablebooksociety.org/A to Z. Kyra will give you the accurate version of that. And also, if you're a subscriber, you are with us today as our guest, and we're happy that you're here. We'd also love for you to become a member. If you'd like to become a member, it's cheap. And if you do it, you get a newsletter that's super great. And Bruce Foster is the editor-in-chief, and he does an amazing job with it. And you probably don't want to miss it. So join us. All right. So Jess Tice Gilbert is our make and take artist this evening, and she is going to be talking us through this project by video, and we're just going to press run and we're going to go, and then it's going to be recorded, and then it's going to be available. So if you need to look at things again more slowly, when that comes out in a couple of days, you'll be able to do that. And Emily says that it's great as long as you've got all your pieces ready right when we start. So if you don't, then don't worry about it. Do it later this week. Ellen's ready. So Jess, She's a multidisciplinary artist. She works in painting, paper engineering, and design. She spent a good long time working in the studios with Robert Sabuda and Matthew Reinhardt, over a decade, in fact. She's also worked as the associate art director at Scholastic, and currently she's the art director at Papyrus Greetings. She's gotten herself out to California. She's still creating paintings along the side. She's got a nice Etsy shop. She's got some very fancy clients, including the Museum of Modern Art and Chanel and Google and HBO and Martha Stewart and Lucasfilm. She's kind of done some stuff. And she's got this great project, which is, we asked her if she wanted to do something that was sort of, connected to the Valentine's Day holiday. And she gave us a couple of options, and we loved this sort of over the moon theme. And let's all make one. Let's go, Emily.
Hey, Movable Book Society. I'm Jess Tice Gilbert, and today we're gonna make a pop-up. What pop-up? This pop-up. So buckle in and get ready.
You'll need glue, a ruler, scissors, knitting needle, X-Acto, and a burnisher. You'll have all your pieces printed, and you should color them now. And let's cut these bad boys out. I'm gonna do it super fast. Obviously, you'll have your pieces already cut out. All right, now we have all of our pieces. Let's take this main piece and move all the other guys out of the way. We're gonna fold along this dotted line. And now we're gonna take our glue and we're gonna glue area, glue A. Not too much. And now we're gonna take our big circle, which is actually the moon, and glue him in the glue A area. Make sure you either use your burnisher and kind of burnish him down, or you can use your hands and fingers and just make sure he sticks. And now we're going to fold this piece forward. And now we're going to fold this one up, down, and down, so you can make a layer. See? That's easy. And now we're going to fold that tab up towards you. And same thing over here. The tabs go up, and we're going to fold the layer up, down, and down to make, again, another layer. See? All right, take your base page or the card, fold it in half along the dotted line, and take your glue. Well, take your piece first, because then we're going to glue it right here on B. Put a small dab of glue and line up the tab. And smush it down. But gently. Make sure you're not moving the pop-up around. Next, we're going to glue C. Put a little dollop of glue on that gray area. And fold that tab under like we did earlier. And line that up on the gray shape. And smush it down. You can see I had a little bit of glue come out, so I took my burnisher and just kind of wiped it away quickly. and make sure that the tabs are glued to the base page before moving on. See, we're glued down. Now we're going to glue down the other side of tabs. So let's put glue on both the D shapes, just a little dollop. And we're going to line up those tabs at the same time. There we go. And smush them down gently. Make sure they stick to the base page. Next, we're going to glue E. Put a little dollop in there and fold the tab under like we did earlier and line that up with the gray shape. Since this card doesn't lay flat, I took my burnisher and used that to push the tab down to glue it to the base page. And slowly close it and give it a nice little mash just to make sure everything is glued down. Next, we're going to take this star piece, fold it back, and then fold the star front forward. So it's like a little Z fold. Next, we're going to put glue on the F area. Just a little bit, just enough to cover the area. And now we take our main piece, turn it around, and you're going to see that the gray shape actually lines up with the back of the moon. Right at the top, you'll see it'll just key right in. And then you can take the star and put it through the slot. Make sure it's glued down. You don't have to rush it. Next, we're going to put glue on G, which is this little triangle shape back here. Again, just a little bit of glue. We don't want to overdo it. And then you'll line up the other little triangle shape. It'll key right in. And your pop-up should look something like this. You can slowly close it. And again, mash it, kind of burnish it with your hands to make sure everything's gluing down nice and tight. All right, now we've glued the main pop-up together. It's looking awesome, but we have two more pieces that we need to add. Here are our two pieces that are left, are both of our clouds. So we're going to put glue on H, just a little bit, and take your big cloud and line the bottom up with the bottom of the H shape. And next, we're going to glue the other cloud on, which is I, so put a little dollop of glue on the I gray area and take your small cloud, and then he can also line up at the bottom of the gray shape. I ended up kind of pinching the clouds on just because the pop-up doesn't lay flat. And you can wait for it to dry, then really make sure that they're dry. So you can close it, open it, and here it is. Thanks for stopping by and making this fun moon pop-up today.
So feel free to send Jess a nice thank you for her project. Look at Emily's. Lovely, lovely. Did you hand cut your stars, Emily?
No, I use stickers.
Stickers. Stickers are a good friend.
Yes.
And Ellen's got something sticking up. Kyle put a number of URLs in the chat for places at the MoMA where you can buy things that Jess has made. She really makes lovely, lovely, lovely work. All right. Last for the evening, our headliner, Spencer Stewart, who is going to talk to us live about collections. And Spencer W. Stewart provides advisory services to private collectors as well as institutions, aiding in the design and execution of collection development, inventories, catalogs, and collection appraisals, as well as the accession strategies. Spencer holds a master's degree in the history of art from the Courtauld Institute in London, England. He's a recipient of the Director's Award. And upon graduation, he took a position with Bonham's Auctioneers, where he worked closely with the North American Rare Books and Manuscripts Department in Toronto and New York. He's an alumnus of the Colorado Antiquarian Book Seminars and completed coursework through the Rare Book School, the University of Virginia. Spencer's also a writer and lecturer for publications, including The Book Collector and Amphora and Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Spencer, talk to us.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much for having me. I'm just going to bring up my slide here. Yeah, and today I thought what I would do is I'm just going to discuss sort of my approach towards discussions of collections, institutional and private collections, and some of the clients that I've worked with who have elements of their collections that are connected with movable books and pop-up books. So you know, this is something to do kind of a survey to think about the approaches to collecting and some of the conditions presently for collectors that really make this an interesting time for developing collections and building your collections. So as you mentioned, I started in the auction world, and the impetus for heading out on my own and starting my own private practice came from, what would happen is I would often do house visits, and at that point in time, working for an auction house, you have particular focus. You're looking at a particular threshold for items that you want to put up for auction, and oftentimes it was situations where I was dealing with friends and family of collectors. And what I would start to see is, as I was working to select certain books from the collection or certain items, you would start to notice that there were these trajectories, these sort of histories of the person's collection. And at some point in time, the enthusiasm changed or the focus altered. And sometimes that was around, not having enough information or not enough of a thought about where you wanted to go next with your collection, or perhaps spending too much on one item, and that ultimately changing the pathway that you were setting out to achieve through your collecting. And so this is where I started to think, if only I could have worked earlier with this collector or this collection to help with strategies of developing, one particular focus that seemed really unique and an area that wasn't totally priced out within a market, or to help this collector start to speak with institutions about perhaps donating the collection and making it, an educational collection for special collections. And so that's really where I decided to set out and work with collectors at a variety of different periods in their collecting, be it early stages when someone's kind of setting out and figuring out their focus and where to find items related to that interest. People who are sort of middle of the road, kind of in the middle stage of their collecting, where they have enough of, they have items. When someone asks them, are they a collector? They answer in the affirmative that they are, but maybe they're not sure where to go next, or they haven't had a chance to look at their collection and see where it's going. Maybe there's sections that they're no longer collecting in actively or interested in, but want to go towards a new section. And then the kind of latter stage of people's collecting, where they're thinking about legacy. They're thinking about, do they want to deaccession this collection through the sale of those items, or donation, or passing them on to friends and family? And how do you set that up? How do you tell the story about the collection that you've built? So in thinking about collecting, I like to step back and think about the early impetus for someone to collect. You know, if you think about yourself at the age of 3, say, you're gathering shells, you're gathering rocks, you're gathering things out in the world, and you have a kind of instinctual connection with these items. They have a kind of elected affinity to them, and oftentimes you bring them together and you sort of go towards people that you know and love, and you show them these items. And I think very much that's the kind of impulse to collect at the beginning. And you go into something, say, you know, the age of 8, 9, you start to collect maybe, you know, playing cards or books. You start to collect things that are somewhat related to the world outside, but also things that form a sense of your identity inside. And then as you go into your sort of adult life, it goes into more often a kind of an intellectual pursuit. And in some cases, what happens is it becomes kind of an insular activity. And the condition for that is, you know, there are other collectors and there's a market there. And so people sometimes tend to close in. That's sort of changing. I think there's lots of clubs, and much like the Movable Book Society, there's these places where people can talk about their collections. And I think that's really important. Oftentimes with those collectors that I was mentioning earlier that kind of neglect their collections or create a kind of divide or somehow feel alien from them, you know, it's because they didn't have a community where they were talking about these collections. And I think that that's really changing as we kind of enter the 21st century and are able to connect and reach out to one another about what really interests us and how that connects to our identity. But, you know, in thinking about the kind of ladder of the timeline I'm talking about, the kind of adult structure, I like to think of it along a plane of a focus on objects and focuses on ideas. And it's a spectrum. It's not necessarily one or the other. They kind of blend together. And so this is an example of 2 collections, 2 separate clients that I've worked with. And one is interested in movable books, but particularly Megendorfer. And this is an offshoot of a larger collection that is focused really on print technologies, and particularly German print technologies through the 1800s. And so this is very much, I would say, a kind of an object collection. It's one that's along traditional lines. It focuses on the product of Megendorfer's productions. And there's an established list through which you fulfill the various titles within that list. And it's very, as you would hear sometimes, a kind of completist approach. And often that means that it's a single medium. It's the pop-up book. You know, it stays within one single lane. Now, on the right is an example of a collector that I work with who is an administrator and an educator, particularly with childhood development, and is interested very much in the long stretch of approaches to children and approaches to education. And Ellen, it was interesting that you brought up the Orbis Pictus. It's really kind of an integral, important part in this larger idea of how you relate to children and how you transfer ideas to children through images. Another item there, and notice here there's lots of variety. It's less of a statement, it's less of Megendorfer's output, and it's more of a question. It's how do we approach the discussion of childhood education, which keeps changing as time goes on. So, you know, there's broadsides, as you see here, an article written by Rakes, which was done in a pseudonym that was advocating for a Sunday school movement. You have Ladislav Sutnar's wood blocks. This collector also has Frobel blocks as well. which is around that same kind of tradition. But and then you have Jean Paget's work on childhood development as well. So it's a mix of things. And what's interesting to say here is that across the spectrum, it mixes together, and they're both creating worlds. They're both creating stories that you're tapping into as a collector, because you're kind of on a threshold. There's the personal history that you have, and then there's a larger history outside of yourself that you're interested in tying into and connecting to in some way. And what's also interesting here is that they also touch on different styles of collecting, histories of collecting. And so I think it's important in setting out as a collector in this present period is to really think about how you have access to good quality information to make informed decisions about your collections. Oftentimes there are collections that get neglected because there was a lack of information at the time of purchasing some items, and it starts to detract and separate from the quality and the focus that you really want in a collection. So, in moving forward at this present time as a collector, I think it's important to think about the conditions under which you are collecting. Ellen, you were talking about these search terms and making sure you have alerts out. That's one really important way of doing things. Another is to sort of keep looking at the bibliographical descriptions of items and looking at how they connect to different items that the dealer's offering. What's the story and the context around them? We're in a period right now where you can actually make sense of that context fairly the information is readily available. And so I often talk about this when you're setting out, be it at the beginning of your collecting or kind of in the middle portion as you're still building and developing your collection, to always be cognizant of a kind of this mix of your financial resources. What's the intake rate at which you're taking in items? How are you allocating your time? Is it something that you rely on a dealer or a collection advisor to help source material? Or is it something that you're doing your own research on, which does take time and is something you should commit your time to? And then finally, space, which is something that sometimes if you're entering into a particular focus of collecting, there's an abundant amount of objects, and you're able to invest in them and build that collection quickly, it's important to make sure that you have a space that you can protect those items and you can also access them, because it's so important to keep connecting with those items and being with them and being able to examine them and explore them and lay them out on the table and see how they all relate, because that's really what it's all about. And then the next thing is really, really important, because when we think about collecting as making a world, it's important to map that world. And one of the ways to do that is one of the only ways to do that is to create a catalog of the collection that you have. And I like to think of it as you see here, ledgers, Excel, and software. Ledgers are good for tens of items where you can keep track of them quite easily. Excel is good for hundreds of items. And if you're, say, collecting thousands of items and they're all different forms of items, you might want to start thinking about a software. And one of the things that's really great about Excel and Upward, a software, something that's connected to your computer, is that it allows you to connect quite easily your collection to the larger internet out there. It allows it to be connective. It allows you to do search terms. It allows you to keep track of where the items are in your collection, but also similar items out in the marketplace. And having that kind of connection so that you can ground it. Another thing that's really great about it is that it also bridges the divide that often happens between one's impression of their collection and the actual contents of their collection. So that you can start to think about, what is the shape of my collection? Where am I going with a particular topic? And when there are certain topics that maybe you're no longer interested in, and you could possibly deaccession in order to finance other parts that you're interested in developing. It's really a helpful way to get a sense of the story of your collecting and how it changes over time. because you can start to see the trajectory as it changes from one place to the other. And that's really to this point of, you know, when we talk about collections in the kind of general context, in the general public, there's often just the collection, the accumulation of objects. But what's really important is to discuss the story of the act of collecting. And that's something that can come out of taking stock of your cataloging and getting a sense of how you are sourcing your items, and the story of how you connect with those items. So I thought I would show two case studies, just examples of clients that I've been working with, that through cataloging and through discussions about their collections, we've been able to build them in different ways, and also to think about the way in which these objects connect to ideas within this person's life, but also you know, connects them with other generations. So the first example that I have here is a client that he was a Czech immigrant who traveled over to North America in the 1970s. And when he came over, what he was collecting at that point was first editions of Czech writers. So you see here Milan Kundera and Karel Čapek, which, interestingly enough, that book has the first instance of the use of the word robot in it. And really are really striking graphic designs as well. The Czech graphic design has a storied tradition. And what happened was that he continued to collect first editions through the 70s, and then what happened was that he had children in the 1980s, and what he started to become interested in was some of the stories that he was connected with when he was growing up, and particularly the work of, and some of you may be familiar with him, is Yuri Trinka, who is also a puppeteer as well, famous puppeteer. And so this was in the development of that collection. He started to focus on that, and he also still had his first editions at that point. Now, when I got involved working with this client, it was actually it was with the grandchildren that he was starting to pivot and change his collection, and he was, you know, continuing to become more aware of the traditions of Czech book design, of movable books, graphic design, all of these things. And what we did is he was no longer interested in engaging with the first editions. He'd spent time with them and really connected with them at a particular time in his life. And what we did is we used those to actually go about searching for Kolbásta works, which he then started to collect. And when the grandchildren would come over, he would bring them over with the Yuri Trinka books and develop, which was kind of an amazing combination of both the illustration and movable books of the tradition of Czech book design. And when they're on the floor together, it's really it's just such a beautiful example. And already we're kind of in discussions with an institution about the donation of this collection at some point. What's interesting is he's also talking to the kids about taking care of the books as well. So they're not being worked and used in a way that that puts them at risk. And of course, as you see, these are the Bancroft and Company editions, and he does have some of the earlier Czech versions as well, which are available. And we continue to keep an eye out for those and have a look at good condition, good quality works. So this is an interesting example of someone who came over in the 70s with first editions, very much connected to himself, moving into having children and starting to try and connect with not only the history of the graphic design of Czech graphic design and book design, but also with the language. He helped use it as a facilitator for teaching Czech to his children, and then on into the next generation. So I've always thought of this one as quite a good, interesting example of that. The next one that I wanted to just talk about was another move of first editions on into other items. And this was a client who's involved with the movie industry, and she started out collecting first editions of novels that appeared in that had movie adaptations, and they were very particular, sort of 1960s, 1970s novels. And she was very particular about the dust jackets, the condition of them, and you know, very much along the tradition of first edition collectors through the 1980s. And what happened was is that as the dawn of the internet started to take place, she was no longer really connecting with those items and started to get interested in the process of filmmaking. And this was at a time where you started to see online, and this is again a discussion of how conditions change for collectors, particularly in the internet age. She started to see examples of storyboards coming up for offer and working scripts and things of this nature. And so she started to collect these through dealers and auction houses, which started to present these items online, and built that collection, and continues to very much focus on this collection in a lot of ways. And I was taken on to work with cataloging that particular part of the collection, because she started to realize that early on she was collecting some things that weren't necessarily right. So we've been kind of working to make sure that we can make the collection as tight as we can in that particular regard. But what's interesting is in the 1910s, she started to, or rather the 2010s, she started to change her focus into movable books, into peep shows, into dioramas, with the particular focus of items and objects that facilitate the cinematic imagination. What are some items that allow us to think about movement of story in physical ways? And if you go back to this discussion of approaches to collecting, you know, so object-based collecting, which is very much similar to the Czech collection I was talking about earlier, this is very much an idea. It's very abstract. And so that's had us looking at various things, but she's been focusing particularly on, as you can see, some of these, you know, the Sayre, the Harlequinades, as well as all variety of different peep shows and panorama scenic books. And this is a collection that continues. Other parts of it are magic lanterns and other things of that nature, and stereoscopic views. So, you know, the future of this one, it's one that keeps on being developed and replenished through research, and really, it's, you know, you go through the 19th century and there are so many different modes of showing what we now know to be the cinematic mode of storytelling, and very much movable books is part and parcel to that tradition. So I think I'll just leave you with a couple of, I'm just going to bring this up here. But if there are any sort of items to take away from these discussions tonight, and I very much look forward to the question and answer period for discussing people who are setting out on their collecting journeys, or people who are established or thinking about where they're going with their collecting. You know, the first is that as soon as you start to self-identify as a collector, it's important to start cataloging your collection and get a sense of where it's at, and start thinking about the conditions of it and some of the questions of, are you looking for the best example of something, or are you looking for a series of items that are connected to something? So, you know, are you interested in the best versions of Meggendorf, or particularly, you know, first editions, you know, German printings, or are you looking for latter examples? So these sorts of questions. And then, of course, the discussion of having a bit of a plan when you're setting out allows for development of good quality. Focusing on, you know, making sure that you're seeing trusted information, making sure that you're reading descriptions, you know, that mitigates risk, and it also just makes happier hunting in terms of your own collecting. One thing that I'll say, that with cataloging, often what happens is that, you know, you refer to it as a collection, but it becomes exposed through cataloging that really it's branches. You know, there's streams that are flowing off into different directions. And it's sometimes people are quite surprised by what they see once you're able to step back and have that analytical distance. And then to say that, you know, the discussion about collecting, you know, I was mentioning this from the outset, that when one collects, you're connecting to a tradition. And oftentimes there's this portrait of a collector who is impulsive, who's someone who thinks that when they have the offer of an item, that's the only chance they'll have for that item. And you have tools at your disposal now as a collector to make informed decisions, which allow you to, you know, in fact, assess the uniqueness of an offer at any given time. You know, is this a once in a lifetime, or are there other options? And could another similar item be offered down the road that may be closer to what you're interested in your larger story of how you're collecting? These are some things that I think are important to keep in mind when one is going about building their collection, so that you stay committed to it and connected with it in that sort of way. So I have I'm available whenever one wants to speak about their collecting. I think it's, you know, it's something that's so connected with people's identity that sometimes it's difficult to have an analytical distance from the practice of collecting. And I'm always available to talk about one's practice and you know, decisions moving forward. So I open the floor now to questions, and I very much look forward to them. Thank you very much for your attention and your interest.
Thank you, Spencer. The first thing that kind of sparked some attention there was the idea of an app or software that you could use. And someone suggested librarything.com. Yeah. Do you have any others that you might like to suggest specifically?
I would probably...
Spencer, quick interruption. Can I have you take off your presentation from the screen?
Certainly. Great.
We can see your face better. Yeah.
Readerware 4 is good. That's one that, you know, I have a sort of selection of them that when I'm talking to clients, you know, that the usability of Readerware 4 I've heard is really really quite good at that kind of hundreds of items within the collection. Library Thing is really it's excellent for connecting with other collectors. I've known that to be a real great advantage with it. I think that, you know, Excel is a good start before you move into using an app, because you could start to see, you know, what is some of the pertinent information that you like to focus on of the items in your collection. And you can start to create columns within Excel of particular pieces of information. And so I think it's a good beginner, at least for, you know, I often have clients in the weeks and months when they're starting the act of cataloging and thinking about it, working through Excel before discussing apps and things of that nature. But that said, Readerware 4 I'd say is good. CLZ is also good, or CLZ. Yeah, Library Thing is also a good one. And then there are some other you know, softwares that I've been using for object or for you know, sort of furniture, prints, photography, fine art, and books. And that's sort of Axial. I have a client that uses Past Perfect because it's big enough. The collection is going to be transitioning into a house museum. So, you know, I think it's good to step back and think about how you're collecting and what you're interested in and how you're focusing on your collections. And that will really very much help you make that decision of what app to use.
So Spencer, I'm asking for a friend. Mm-hmm. For real, actually. You know, because of who I am, I am the guy who fields the fairly regular emails that come in saying, "Hey, I have this collection. I'm ready to sell. I'm ready to sell. You know, what should I do?"
Mhm.
And I have inherited, and I'm saying this to all of y'all in case that email is coming my way soon. You know, I've collected a nice letter from our previous director, Ann Montanaro Staples, and a lot of it is basically, this is a very hard thing to do. But you know, what can we offer any quick, easy advice in our format this evening to help people kind of get ready for that moment, to kind of best position themselves for that moment?
Mhm. Um, a good way to begin is it's unfortunate to say this, but it is the cataloging of it. To first take stock of what are the items that are within the collection is helpful for you to get a sense of what's there, and then start to look at the collection as it relates to the larger world of the marketplace, but also institutional collections and the world outside of your collecting practice. So that's it really starts with a good cataloging to get a sense of what are the contents of it, and then from there you'll get a sense of that there'll be multiple collections. It's not going to be one thing, and therefore there's going to be several strategies or processes of deaccessioning it. So there might be a collection in there that matches in nicely with the special collections elsewhere that has similar items that they don't have in that, you know, they have similar items, but they don't have those specific items in their collection. With that inventory, you may want to start having conversations with that institution. And it's important to have it with the maximum amount of quality information about that collection possible, so that correspondence can start at a higher level and you can be more advanced on the process. And then, you know, you have these questions of if it's something that you want to deaccession in order to monetize it, start to look at the different parts of the collection and, okay, what are the items that are, you know, the market is really within dealers or secondhand bookstores or antiquarian bookstores? What could be possibly, you know, something to go through auction, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other item, the other approach or other strategy is a legacy strategy of passing it on to another generation or friends or people that you're connected with. At that point, it is imperative that you start to speak with those people prior to the process of passing it on to them. You know, the thing is that if you don't pass on those stories and have them connect with the collection and have them connect with your act of collecting and really get a sense of communicating what is the value of it, you know, they will not be able to piece together those stories in your absence. So you owe it to yourself in that collection to connect those dots, to make those bridges, so that there isn't a situation where the expectations are all out of proportion at a later date. So, you know, time, really, when you boil it down, it takes time, and it's good to start as soon as you can. And it's important to not think about the collection as one homogeneous whole, but to start thinking about what are the stratums, what are the layers, what are the different channels within your collection. So that's what I would say.
Excellent. Thank you. Can you please give some pointers about which basic attributes to add in an Excel spreadsheet or linking to ISBNs via a cheap mobile barcode scanner?
I can't speak for the barcode scanners. I know that there are a couple of apps that do have that actually there are quite a few now that work through your smartphone camera that scan iPhone, scanners. A lot of the material that I'm working with is pre-ISBN, so it's not something that, but I do know that there are a number of apps that do have ISBN scanners. What I know is one of the issues with that is that once you scan it, it's important to take a look at how the capitalization's working, what's the order of the names as they come up. I've seen some fluctuation on different apps. It's significant enough that you should be mindful of that to make sure. Another thing is that sometimes it will just be a generic ISBN, and then sometimes it will mix up the publication date. I've just seen some glitches that happen. So I think it's always important to come work your way back. With regards to manual entry of into an Excel sheet, the standards of name, imprint, full title, and then you can do more of the bibliographical discussions of edition details, discussions of condition, and then a thing that I often encourage, if there are items that are more valuable, is to start having little notes, making notes about what are comparables, either at auction appearance or through sellers, and being cognizant always of the difference of valuations through auction and through dealers, how there's often a margin markup and those sorts of things. So that's what I would say, is you start with that. And then, I have clients that will often write anecdotes about the stories that are around collecting those items. And they read like travel logs. I mean, there's one couple that I know that are Irish. They're Irish expats who come back and forth, and in the summers they go back to Ireland and pick up books. And some of the wild trips where they've picked up books is just wild. So that's a whole other element of it, which is really the soul of it.
So Ellen, start writing your stories down.
Yeah.
Lady who's been asked to share one and she couldn't come up with one right off the top of her head.
I just thought of one, but we can save it for the end.
All right, so let's do one more. I saw that Larry was asking, is there an institutional favorite pick for software?
Not that I know of. I wish I had an answer to that. There are protocols often to intake of items. So the way that they're described within their catalogs, that's kind of the closest that I can think of. But in terms of what people use, no, not that come to mind at the moment. But
okay.
I said in the first part of my video that I use FileMaker Pro.
Yeah.
I've just been using that for years. I don't like it, but I can't move it to anything else. So
that's one of the issues with FileMaker Pro is the transferring. I know that is an issue.
It has everything. I have 25 fields of information plus images.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you very much, Spencer W. Stewart, for a presentation that's slightly off the main path from what we usually talk about, but it was terrific, and really ultimately is pretty important to lots of folks who are collecting. We're collecting. So we are at the 9:32 mark. So I think what we'll do is let's have an official sign off, and we'll have a moment to flash our logo. So we'll have a good video edit point. And then we'll keep rolling for a little bit longer, so folks have a chance to do a little bit more chatting if they'd like to. So here's me going silent for 5 seconds. Let me say thank you and goodbye first. Thank you and goodbye. And now I'm going to go silent for 5 seconds. All right, I'm back.
Welcome back.
So, and if folks are tired because you're on the East Coast or otherwise, and you can catch some of the after party here in the recording if you'd like to go to sleep. All right, Ellen, what's the story?
I was vacationing in Italy with my husband. It was Positano, which has very steep hills. And I hadn't, not that I went looking for books, but there was a man walking down in front of me, and I could see he was holding up a pop-up book, and it had a very erect penis. So I was very intrigued. It turned out to be a book by Peter Mayle. One doesn't think about him doing books like that. And we didn't speak the language, and so I couldn't find where he bought it, but he let me look at it. And subsequently, I was able to find it, but I was introduced to the book in that very way.
That's pretty great. That's pretty great. I'm also super quick reminded, while folks are still here, because Kyra, thank you, threw it in the chat. We've got two kind of amazing conferences that are coming up this week, both of which are free. The URLs are both in the chat feed, so you can take a look at them. One is being run by our friends in Turin. So it's primarily a conference that's being hosted in Italian, but everything's going to also be available in English too. It starts Tuesday and runs through Friday. And then the Book Paper Thread organization, which was born this past year out of pandemic conditions and wanting to offer content and programming to the book artist crowd. So they're having a conference that runs Thursday through Saturday. And it's got some good stuff in it too.
Including Sean.
I will have things to say at both of these events. It is true. It is true. Oh, and thanks, Colette just threw in Printed Matter's got a virtual book fair. The 25th through the 28th. So you can Google Printed Matter, should you care to. Thanks, Kyle. There's the URL. So here's this question. While we're lingering on here a little bit this evening, we've heard all about collecting from Spencer, but Spencer, what's your favorite collected pop-up book? Or any.
Yeah, or any. The Kobashta work is just unbelievable. I mean, there's these. Well, I've been able to see a lot of the kind of the Megendorfer pieces, and the amount of different movable parts in one kind of spread is just incredible. I've not yet found any kind of scholarship to really break down, and perhaps someone could point me in this direction, of how the correspondence was taking place when these books were being made. Because they're just that the intricacy of them, the circus, or the zoo piece, it's just an incredible work. So I think those ones are really the ones that kind of blow my mind. I mean, all of the stuff that comes out of kind of Waldo Hunt's project after World War II, just the scale, just how many different books that were produced with such high quality, it's incredible. The community in North America and the United States, the books that have been made are just unbelievable. So I don't know if I have a favorite one. It's always been kind of the mechanisms and the ingenuity of the execution that blows my mind. The Nister, the vanishing pictures, the kind of Venetian blind technique, that is unbelievable. And some of those items still, I've the collection that I was working on that's about cinematic imagination. She's collected a couple of those, and they still are in fairly good nick, which is impressive. So that's kind of an all-over answer, but I would say, I guess the 19th century, that sort of the various practices that come out of that, really interesting to me.
Ellen, do you want to take a moment as one of the world's leading Kubashta scholars to respond to Spencer's comment?
I don't know that I have a one favorite of Kubashta's, but building on what Spencer was saying about moving your collection, I'm very strong on looking for original art. And through connections with the family, I've been able to see his process, his sketches, and then the mock-ups, and then the final thing. And that absolutely thrills me to see how he worked. He was just brilliant.
Have there been any efforts to put together a publication of his process?
His grandson, who's reprinting them, writes about that, and his daughter, Dagmar, who's a member of the Movable Book Society and has been to, several of our conferences and lives in Canada. She always talks about that he worked at home, and so she was privy to his process and his reference library and all the things that I wrote about in one of the catalogs that based on what her information.
Yeah.
We can talk about Kubashta forever.
I know. Yeah, it's great. I mean, just the traditions coming out of Czechoslovakia, some of the sort of theories of education, the kind of those blocks that I was showing earlier. There was a lot of really interesting approaches and ideas going on.
At this point too, if anyone wants to just shout something out, they'd be totally welcome to. To any of our speakers, any questions you might still have lingering.
I actually do have a question for the community, I guess, in general. Recently, I thought I bumped into somebody's link that had made up a website where they were selling their collection and they were selling individual pop-up books, but I'm not sure if I was mistaken. I think I misplaced the link and now I can't find it. It was probably within this past week that I saw it. I don't know if anybody else had seen this from somebody setting up a website and they were selling just a bunch of pop-up books. I don't know if anybody else bumped into that. If anyone has any information, let me know.
Isabel, is that just maybe a dream you had?
No, I swear I clicked on it and there was a list of books and then I lost the link. I must have closed the page and I don't know. I don't know what happened.
History, Isabel? Search history?
Huh?
Take a peek in your search history?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've been looking through it and trying to find it and haven't bumped into it yet, so.
Well, I haven't made an active effort. I'm moving, so this library is going to be disassembled and put someplace else. So I have duplicates that I don't want to have to move, so I've been just talking to people, when they email me or something, that, okay, if you're interested in something.
Don't forget the princess.
I'll send you a list.
Yes, please do. Please do.
The family, the royalty.
Okay. Are you moving in New York somewhere? Or?
Moving into the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm
Has anyone heard from Anne? I know you kind of touched on Anne earlier, but I noticed she hasn't been on the Zooms at all. Is it?
Oh no, she's been on all of them up until tonight.
Oh, okay. I tried to scroll through the screens, but I must have missed her on that. Okay.
Yeah. She's got more important things to do. I mean, come on.
I know. So I have a question about the conference. When I was looking through, I
Yeah.
didn't answer because I can go either way. I mean, of course, I'd rather be there in person.
Yeah.
Is the conference definitely going to happen in person? As like,
It-
say numbers don't get worse, say the vaccine's happening for more people in more states. Because I noticed a lot of people are saying virtual, and that didn't really sit well with me. I'm like, oh, I didn't want to answer virtual because too many people were saying virtual. But I know for safety reasons, we need to maybe, to end up virtual, but
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely going to happen.
okay.
It definitely feels like there's going to be enough folks who are vaccinated that it'll make sense and folks will be comfortable with it. Kyra just did some summing up for me for those numbers. 11 live, 16 hybrid. Yeah. But it's a big question mark, eh? Yeah.
Is there going to be a certain, in your mind, I mean, I'm not committing you to this, but a ballpark of what date you're going to decide if it's going to be in person or not?
Oh yeah, it's regardless of how we do it, it's that weekend that bridges September to October, September 30th to October 2nd, something
Right.
like that.
I know that, but what I meant is like the deciding of if it has to go virtual instead of in person. Like,
Oh
when would
yeah, I
you
don't know.
decide that? You don't know yet? Okay. I know there's a lot
mean,
of decision making and all that, so.
Yeah, we're, basically at this point, planning as if it's just going to be available in both versions. So
Okay.
trying to be prepared for folks to be able to make that decision in either direction, possibly even up to the last minute.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it still would be in Denver, correct?
And it's in Denver.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be in Denver regardless.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have, reached out to the presenters who were arranged already, and most, not all, but most of them have responded and said, yeah, we're in, we'll figure something out. So the agenda essentially stands. Yeah.
One last question, not related to necessarily the conference, but anybody working on a pop-up pandemic book? I know, I had to go there, sorry.
That's a great question.
So for whatever paper engineers are out there, go for it.
Right.
Yeah, it is a wonderful structure.
Yeah.
Dorothy,
Yes.
on the free conferences this week in the United States, not the Italian one, but on the free USA one
Okay.
that I put the link up to, they have a virtual book fair, and there is a pandemic related book. The virtual book fair is open right now, and people
Okay.
are adding items, but I did notice one, a virus related book,
Okay.
artist book. I'm not sure if it's pop-up or not, but I did notice that this evening.
Well, besides being a book collector, I'm a scrapbooker, and the scrapbooking industry had got jumped on all that pandemic stuff, and I have all different papers. I've been saving things, and to do a a scrapbook, but I think why not do a pop-up on the pandemic,
Give it a shot. Sorry. Sorry, it's late.
It's late. Right. Get a pass.
As I was quoted, right, Alan, in the newsletter, that I will ask the questions that nobody else wants to ask. That's all I got for tonight.
Thanks, Dorothy.
No problem. Thank you.
Kyle has thrown a pandemic pop-up book in there. Oh, it's, yeah, the Walking Dead book, right? Katie's thinking that Abecedarian Gallery did a pandemic exhibit.
There's one coming up called Pandemonium that in Denver that'll be opening in one location in March and another location in November, December. So not during the times we're planning the exhibit, but there's always an online presence for that. For Abecedarian exhibits.
Yeah, yeah. Kyra, do you remember? Do you still have it up? Who was the artist for the book that you saw at the Book Paper Thread site? I'm imagining Kyra.
Her fingers are flying.
Right,
She's
right.
So the chat continues to have slightly, not necessarily pop-up books, but definitely pandemic related books. And definitely Station 11 is a really good book.
Station 11, yeah.
You know.
So we're going to regroup again in May. And, you know, we do now have a page on our website for these Zoom things. So check that out. You can see what's coming down the pike. Share with your friends. Bring them along. I think we might be ready to call this call it to a close. Emily, do you have any wrap-up remarks?
No, I don't. It's just that I look forward to the next one. We get part 3 of Ellen's survey of her collection, and we hope to have MJ Linford, and you know, they're always different and they're always good. So join us.
Absolutely. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, Spencer, Renee, Andy, Jess. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, team, for another smooth, flawless event. This was a pretty good one tonight. Yeah.
Technical.
All right. We'll see you all again soon. Have a good night.
All right. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.